Good morning, everyone. Brian here with BMK Retro Gaming. I've been taking some medication for my allergies and am up a bit early, so forgive me if this video is coming in quite a bit earlier than my usual. That type of allergy medication, sometimes you just don't sleep well, so I'm up raring to go and time to get moving. You guys can probably tell I got the haircut and shave again, so we're back in a bit better appearance for now. Anyway, this morning I have a review for you guys of the Atari VCS 2600 original library game, Pac-Man. For those who might complain this is going to come up sooner or later anyway, I'm going to review the entire library that I can, so... And besides, I'm one of those who actually is more forgiving of this game as I am with many others. As a matter of fact, I intend to at least attempt somewhat to defend the finer points of the game as well. To me, despite its reputation, it's not a universally bad game as much as it's one you have to learn to appreciate the things it actually got right and which are impressive about it, while also acknowledging that it has many faults, flaws, and vices to it as well. Pardon me a moment. Again, almost forgot to include some refreshment. Anyway, the arcade cabinet original was developed and published by Namco in 1980. And pretty much both in Japan and here in the US, among other places, the world was pretty much stormed by Pac-Man fever. Or Pac fever. And, well, it was eventually inevitable that someone was going to get a hold of the rights to do, the licensing rights to do the first arcade port. And Atari got the rights to do pretty much all of them as far as I know of. And came out with it, courtesy of developer Todd Fry in 1982. Now, it is not a direct port of the arcade cabinet original as much as it is an adaptation, for a few reasons. Two of the more prominent are that the Namco arcade cabinet original's hardware was quite a bit more powerful than the Atari VCS 2600 home video game console's hardware, so there were going to be some trade-offs anyway. Another reason is many of the techniques and tricks for development which developers would learn over time, well, by this time there weren't as many which had been discovered, invented, and otherwise learned, so they just weren't as well known, so Mr. Fry did not have as much to work with for improving things as he might have liked in some areas. As we'll see, he did employ at least one of them I can tell you guys about, which had already come about. And anyway, the other reason is, considering these limitations, and the fact that Mr. Fry happens to be and was a very creative developer in his own right, he decided to go ahead and make it an adaptation. His envision of what Pac-Man as a game on the Atari VCS 2600 would be like. Which, considering what he had to work with, that's not what I would say is the world's most terrible idea. Though, as we'll see, Atari and Mr. Fry both learned quite a bit of a lesson from all of this in the long run. Anyway, I have my loose copy here, which I picked up at my local game exchange retailer some time back. At the time, it cost me about $2.99, and I forget, it may have been one of those for buying it with a lot of some others that I actually got for free included. It's pretty okay here. Let's see. Licensed by Namco Incorporated. Ooh. I didn't see here. This one is actually the one I got is actually the Sears Telegames, so interesting to have that little variant there, which I always do appreciate that variation in things. And I also ended up with my loose copy getting an instruction manual, but I got it separately. Funny thing with this is that when I got my Mattel Intellivision 2 collection with about 19 games for it, A small handful of instruction manuals for Atari VCS 2600 games, which weren't even included, happened to end up being in there. And, well, Pac-Man is one game which I already had and didn't have instructions for, so that was actually nice. And some have told me it's nice I actually got the black and white label, as it's kind of not always the most common. Maybe they were joking with me, I don't know. Anyway, it's pretty okay art on the front. I don't know why Pac-Man is depicted in things like these as having arms and legs. I guess he technically does, but it wouldn't make for expedient gameplay for that to be shown on screen. Anyway, here we have a table of contents, which you don't find in every manual. And story of Here's Pac-Man and Life in Maze Land. And a little bit of explanation of some of the items and the differences from the arcade cabinet original on that. Using the Ghost, using our controllers, console controls, and let me see, game variations, along with some helpful hints for Pac-Man survival, and our back. Now, let me see, I'll give you guys a little bit. This is kind of amusing, so I'll read this to you. Here's Pac-Man. We know that millions of people all over the world just love the Pac-Man arcade game. Pac-Man has won the hearts of men, women, and children everywhere. We also know that Pac-Man has traditionally been an arcade game. Well, we at Atari know all about arcade games. After all, we make some of the greatest arcade games in the world, and we know how to bring the same dynamite gameplay into your home. Our Pac-Man has all the excitement and challenge of the standard arcade game. Basic elements, anyway. My words, not theirs. And you get to play in the comfort and convenience of your own home. Yes, without spending a small fortune in quarters on an arcade cabinet. That would have been one of the big appeals. This is especially advantageous if you still plan to make an occasional appearance at the arcade to show off your great playing skills. Little do they know that you've been practicing at home all along. Maybe debatable as to whether you can actually practice the game for the arcade cabinet original this way, but it does have the basic gameplay elements, and also, despite the differences, that wouldn't be so ridiculous, I don't guess. Though it would still be a bit of a stretch, since there are enough differences for the that you'd have to learn how to convert over. Just in case you're new to Pac-Man, don't worry, it's easy to learn. You'll be a pro in no time at all. So relax, get comfortable, and enjoy it in the privacy of your own home. We suggest that you read this instruction booklet thoroughly before beginning gameplay. We know that you won't want to miss any important details about gameplay. You might even find it entertaining. Okay, and on Life in Maze Land, this is one of the things I wanted to read to you guys. The object of the game is to keep Pac-Man happy and healthy in his home of Maze Land. Okay, and that's as far as I'm getting there. As far as it goes, who knew that Pac-Man was kind of like an early prototype version of the Tamagotchi virtual pet? At least they make it sound that way. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get this video over into checking out some gameplay, so we can take a look at that, and I'm going to try my best again to point out some of the faults, flaws, vices, as well as some of the finer points of the gameplay, and make the argument for why, it's not really the best arcade port by any stretch of the imagination, but to me an okay game on its own. Anyway, I'm going to get set up for that, and we're going to check it out. Okay, so pretty much here we go. Wait. Okay, make sure I got the right gameplay variation. I'm going to go to 7, primarily because it's one of the easiest. It's for children, pretty much, with ghosts that move at a very slow crawl. Okay, one of the first differences you can see is the maze layout is drastically different from the arcade cabinet original. That is a vitamin, which takes the place of the fruit and other special items. which it does the same thing. It appears and sits there until you get it, or if you don't after a while, it ends up disappearing. So I've used the part. There we go with the ghost. As you can see, they did get right that there's 4 of them, though. It's interesting, how do you say, because, well, that's one of those programming tricks or techniques I was telling you guys about for development that Mr. Fry was able to use. There are only 2 of those ghosts actually there. The other 2 are mirrored images or duplicates. You see the Atari VCS 2600s. It's only capable of producing about 2 images on 2 moving objects on screen at the same time. So, starting with ports like darn it, like Space Invaders, a way to get the 2 images, original enemy images, to mirror and duplicate each other was developed so that you could have more on screen than just 2, because that's all you usually can besides just yourself. But basically, I forget exactly how it works, but basically it's a technique which allows you to well, the 2 extra, any extra enemies beyond those 2 are going to have the same sprite and all mirrored, but with there we go, I got an extra life, which you do get every time you beat one of the maze levels. Anyway, it allowed for you to have the extra sprites for the enemies could be redone aesthetically. They could have their look changed, while otherwise they would behavior-wise and such be the same as the 2 that they were mirrored after as duplicates. Same way the ghosts are done here. And that's also one of the reasons why they flicker so bad. But it was one of the only ways to really present you with 4 ghosts as enemies on screen at one time. Another aspect of the gameplay a lot of people weren't great with is the fact that Pac-Man is, the warp tunnels are on top and bottom. Well, Mr. Todd Fry has said since that he never really understood why that's a big deal to people, because of arcade accuracy. But that was a concept that was, you know, still not quite as well appreciated by, say, developers and publishers like Atari back then as it would come to be in times since, so. Now, Pac-Man also looks kind of like he's a wrench head or something like that. His shape is not entirely round. And he has an eye to boot, so. Which, that kind of got on some people's nerves about it, but as it goes, I think having an eye actually gives him a little bit more of a character, in a way. The old empty face look to me was okay, but not really my favorite, and I wouldn't say that it is horrid or anything, but having an eye just makes him seem like a little bit more of a fleshed out character to me, and I don't mind that too much. Not really. Good idea to get the area right around their box in the maze before you get other things so that you will have time to handle that before they have time to come after you on it. And I messed up and forgot he'd be coming out there. See, this may not be an arcade port by any measure, but the basic elements of the Pac-Man gameplay are still there. It's kind of like my, I forget which of my preferred YouTubers said this. I think it was either Phil, the No Swear Gamer, or maybe it was Brett Weiss, I forget, but one of them, if not 2, were talking about how this is kind of like what Pac-Man gameplay would be taken down to a bare bones level, and I can agree, it is pretty bare bones. But all the basic elements of what makes a Pac-Man game a Pac-Man game are in here, so it may be bare bones and not resemble the arcade cabinet original by that much of any, but it does work. in a general sense. The background color, instead of being black, is blue for a good reason. Atari had designated that only space-themed genre games would be given black backgrounds, so a dark blue was the closest compromise that Mr. Fry could actually give, so you'd think they might have made an exception to make this look a bit more like the arcade cabinet original and thus be a better regarded game by some, but nope. Atari could be like a lot back then in terms of they'd sit there and really do overhead, how do you say, they'd get in the way of the developer about as much as not. Say, oh no, we don't want you to do this, we want you to do that instead, you know. Especially by this point where Warner Communications was the technical owner and all, so. I guess you could say they could have done a worse job with that part, though. For me, at least, Pac-Man is an acceptable arcade port in this form, even though I can see why people didn't find it to be quite what they were hoping for. It would have been a disappointment on that, among other levels. It just doesn't have that Pac-Man appearance. And the collision detection is not super good. Even a little tap by the ghost and you're dead, so. Interestingly enough, all four ghosts do have basically at least something of their original arcade cabinet original programming for how they act. Of course, two are more aggressive, two are much less so, and well, they have only about a tenth of that individuality programming to them compared and contrasted to what they would have in the arcade cabinet original. But that's not so terrible in a way. They still do act like they would, usually. Which does still allow you to kind of develop a pattern of play around them if you need to. Oops, there goes my next life. We're getting close to game over. You get about 4 if you count the one that you don't see on screen right away. You know, the one that's there right after the last one that you can see is gone? Yeah. Another nice tip, stay away from the center when they are coming back out. Another good thing to bear in mind is do not... Well, I mean, about the ghost, you know, once you eat them in this, in your chase mode, they do not respawn until after the power pill's effects are actually worn off. So don't look for them to come back out at you before that. Oh boy, they've got me. Maybe. Nope. Pac-Man's too slippery for you. Okay, I'm not that slippery. And there's my game over. Okay, I think you guys have seen enough of the gameplay in general. The other thing I guess you guys could say is the point values are worth about a tenth of what they are in the arcade cabinet original, except for the vitamins, which actually, as opposed to the fruits, they're worth a lot more in terms of they're more like the value of the watermelons on a couple levels in the arcade cabinet original, being 100 points apiece, with those being, I think it's like 1,000 or something, I forget. Anyway, they're the best way to really rack up your score. Anyway, that's enough of that. Okay, so that was Pac-Man, a 1982 original library game for the Atari VCS 2600 by developer Todd Fry. Is it really the world's worst arcade port? It's not the best. I wouldn't call it anywhere near the best. I think what makes a lot of people, you know, look at it the way they do is if they had played the arcade cabinet original beforehand. You're going to compare contrast them, even though that's not really a very fair idea in many respects. considering that this is an adaptation rather than a straight port. While at the same time, it certainly could have been better. I'm sure, there are some people who are going to go on here and say, oh, well, maybe in the comments section, I never played it in the arcade before I had it for the Atari VCS 2600, so I didn't think that badly of this at all, which I've seen those types of comments quite a few other places, and yeah, whether you encountered this or the arcade cabinet original first probably would have influenced your perspective on it by quite a bit. Anyway, Mr. Fry also, believe it or not, is quite proud of the work he did with this port, and with as stated before, even though he acknowledges had he been given a larger game ROM size that he could use in the 4K cartridge, and known a few more things he didn't now, and been given a little more time, he could have made some improvements. For instance, he had a way to eliminate the flicker from the ghost that he was going to implement, but Atari wanted this published and were fine with it as it was, so they went ahead and released it. Though despite it still being released with a few things left undone, it's not considered like a prototype, it was a full release. And the ghost flicker, like I said, for that technique would kind of been necessary, even though he could have found a way to force them to stay solid color instead. Would have been nice, but just didn't happen. Anyway, I do have quite a few videos to recommend to you guys on this one. With my preferred YouTubers. Phil, with his channel, No Square Gamer, has a good one. Brett Weiss, author and overall great YouTuber and retro gamer to start with. Old Classic Retro Gaming has a good video. Jimbo Games, a new one. I think this will be the first thing I've recommended from them, or maybe the second. Retro Sutra has two, comparing contrasting it to the different ports, and I forget if the other one they compare contrast it with the arcade cabinet original or what, but it's in there. Then Gen X Grown Up has one. He's not a big fan. Or the Dot Eaters, not a big fan either, but both okay. Atari Age has a video on Mr. Todd Fry's reaction to Pac-Man 8K, which I'm going to include here, where as Mr. Fry also mentions how he is proud of his original port, and knows it could have been improved and would have liked to do that, while also is quite impressed with how homebrew ports such as Pac-Man 8K and Pac-Man 4K came out. So, hey, the guy acknowledges that he didn't do a perfect game and that some have done better, but still, I give Mr. Fry a big A for effort on trying to get this done back then. Again, this the game was a pretty big technological achievement for the time, considering that the differences with the Namco Arcade Cabinet Original and the Atari VCS 2600, questionable as to if this could have even been done at all. So, Atari obviously thought so, but it's still pretty impressive what he was able to get done. Okay, and Kumar's Gaming has a nice video on it. And Atari Man 71 has it featured along with a couple other games too. So I'll leave links to all of those so you guys can check those out if you like. And I'll also go ahead and leave a link to the Wikipedia article. And yes, there is one specifically on this port of the game. That's how different it's considered to be. Let's see, some other minor differences, I guess, are, that you have the dashes, which are known as wafers, to be eaten rather than eating dots. And as I said, the vitamins take the place of the fruit, though they perform the exact same function, so no big deal. The power pellets are square, not round. Maybe they could have called them power tablets. Oh, and the score does turn over. I forget if it's after about just under 1 million points or 99,999 or what. But, so you do have a score rollover at a certain point. Though you can keep playing beyond that, it won't keep track of your score anymore. Hey, at least you don't have a kill screen. Anyway, so my view is, I'll let you guys decide for yourself if you love this game, hate it, think it has its good points or not. To me, it's a fine game in terms of it's a very good and challenging maze game in the Pac-Man genre, a very fine Pac-Man game in its own right. On its own merits, it's just fine like that. It's when it gets compared, contrasted with the arcade cabinet original, I believe, is where people start to see that it is rather lackluster and could have really been done better. But like I said, if you didn't have that comparison contrast to make, this wouldn't have seemed so bad. I mean, again, it may be bare bones, but it's still Pac-Man. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video and all, and you guys take care. Have a nice morning. And please don't forget to if you enjoy my channel's content, please like, share, and subscribe. Take care. Have a nice morning, and I will see you guys again in my next video. There we go.